Hey lovelies, Esther here with a sort of first impressions comparison video of the first edition of the Lonely Dreamer Tarot by Melissa Wotherspoon, which I've had for a few months now and I adore. A deck that comes about as close to being a soul deck as any that I've ever had. And the second edition, which just arrived today. Speaking of soul decks, I mean, here's the thing, I'm a woman with the Wild Unknown tattooed to her arm. That's a deck that means a lot to me, a deck that really brought me into my current incarnation with Mindful Tarot. But is the Wild Unknown my soul deck? No. Aquarian Tarot, Morgan Greer Tarot, Pixie's Original, the just the 1909, 1910 Rider-Waite-Smith. I mean, these are decks that mean a lot to me, any one of which perhaps I might at some time or another designate as a soul deck, but I've never really gone there. I'm just too I'm just too promiscuous, I guess. But here's the thing. There's something about this deck which hits a particularly important spot in my heart. Some of it is, and this is true in both the first and the second edition, some of it is the cardstock. So it's very flexible linen cardstock that feels wonderful and riffle shuffles wonderfully and feels very durable. Reminds me a little bit of the cardstock for the Slow Tarot, which some of you may have received in Kickstarter. Was that like 2 years ago? It's a really wonderful, user-friendly cardstock and something that shows the softness of Redon's palette, shows it off really well. It's not totally a matte finish because it's linen. Let's see if we can clarify what the finish looks like. Right, it's not a matte finish. So linen finish has a little bit of glint to it, but it's not glossy. I also, and this is such a small point, but some of you may groove on what I'm saying. Look at these corners. I mean, this very subtly rounded corner is just magnificent. So some of this is the physical quality of the deck, but most of it is the visual quality, right? And Redon's artwork, he was, I think his dates are like 1860s-ish to 1916-ish, a precursor to Dadaism and Surrealism, deeply influenced by the emergence of sort of notions of the psyche and psychoanalysis. He also, and I just found this out today as I was looking up more about his life, he was also really interested in Hinduism and Buddhism, and he was painting and drawing at a time when the West was beginning to translate a lot of Buddhist texts. So it was sort of, Japan reopened in the Meiji Restoration in the 19th century, and imagery and scriptures and ideas and a sort of interest in all things Japanese was abundant during Redon's lifetime. So, a card like this, right? This is actually from a painting that's in the Musée d'Orsay in Paris. This is a painting of the Buddha. The title of this card is The Buddha, and it's become one of the bonus cards that Melissa Wotherspoon's included in the second edition, a card called Intuition. So for someone like me, mindful Zen Buddhist tarot person, what's not to love in this deck? The other thing is, Redon, and I really want to find a good biography of him because everything I've read online about his life is fascinating. His father made a huge amount of money in the slave trade. And Redon started out his career in charcoal, doing these drawings that he called noir, that he called blacks, these dark drawings. And there's a lot of darkness in his palette and a lot of sense of shadow. And I just wonder what the legacy of slavery and of really growing up in that kind of Creole environment, what that did for his artwork. So interesting place to explore shadow. Okay. So both the first edition and the second edition have a number of bonus cards. In the first edition, first of all, this kind of prayer rug image for the back as opposed to the more floral, brighter version in the second. These are both, I love the backings on both. In general, the second edition has more bright colors. Just, I very quickly glanced at some of the cards. I haven't done a complete flip through. But in general, I think the lightning and the lightning of color in the on the backs of these cards is significant in terms of the ways in which the second edition brightens things up. Okay, so we start with the bonus cards. The Dreamer, I love this card, and Shadow. Guardian Spirit and Intention. And notice she's, Wotherspoon's kept the backs from the first edition as a bonus card in the second edition. I love the idea of a prayer rug as the card for intention. This card, the Seeker, becomes the Fool in the second edition. Ancestors. And this is the shadow card called L'Ombre in the first edition. Versus, well, not versus, these aren't opposed to each other, but grounding. And Spirit. You have one more bonus card in the second edition. So this was the Fool for the second edition, is the Seeker, is the card, same image from the Seeker for the first. And here's a really kind of characteristic change from the first edition to the second. The way this Magician is really brightened up, made more angelic, more aligned with light, rather than with a kind of necromancy. Notice with the Lemniscate, this is one of the things that makes this deck so successful, that Wotherspoon just really has great collage, kind of photoshopping skills in terms of altering Redon's images to bring in more Waite-Smith Waite-Smith symbolism without it feeling like this completely choppy collage overlay that we see with some artist-oriented decks. Lightning of the color here in the High Priestess. There's been a shift with the coloring. Now, I'm really interested in the Emperor, which is one of my soul cards, you know, in terms of the numerology of one's birth date, but also is my hub card in my Wheel of Life spread this year. So, a shift here for the Emperor. I love both of these. I'm not sure which one I like better. I love this Strength card. I really admire it. And the Hermit, you know, one of these cards that has the explicit Buddhist imagery that Redon brought into his art. By and large, I think I like the second edition better, maybe, just from my quick glance through, but this Wheel of Fortune in the first edition I like a whole lot more. I also find myself resonating more with this Justice card from the old edition, the first edition. And Justice is sad in both of these decks. And there is a kind of sadness in Redon's artwork, which just makes for a particular kind of tarot experience. I think I resonate more with the death in the first edition. Yeah, I love this downward flying devil holding onto the chain, like he's entrapped by his own, you know, that sort of image of the devil as being the ways in which we're trapped in old patterns and old habits. And I like this idea of, like, you know, freely flying down the chain of our addictions, the chain of our habits. And you notice here there's a little chip on this devil card. This cardstock does, I think, chip a little bit more easily than one would hope. Kind of magnificent star card. And again, I really think that she's lightened up the imagery, the coloring and the palette, and lightened up, sort of just brightened all of the cards. Whoops. It was like, that Judgment looks like the sun. That's because I have the wrong card. Yeah. I love the way Wotherspoon does the wands with these leafless trees. So Ace of Wands, Two of Wands, beautiful card. So this Five of Wands, yeah, different connotation. This has a more uplifting, this sort of emphasizes the ways in which that combative kind of sibling rivalry, like combat among peers energy of the Five of Wands can be negative, but it can also be playful and about a kind of transcendence of the limitations of self through a really kind of collaborative, energetic community. Seven of Wands is a card that in general means a whole lot to me. So I have to say that I'm disappointed by her Seven of Wands. It just doesn't, this choice doesn't speak to me. But I am realizing that it would be useful for me, oh, such a beautiful card. It'd be useful for me to know more about the actual painting choices. So for instance, I love this Nine of Wands. It's the card image that I chose as my pouch for the deck. And I just learned today, this is from a painting entitled Saint Sebastian. So, Saint Sebastian was a martyr, and what a perfect choice for the Nine of Wands, that sense of self-sacrifice, of standing firm till the end. So I have a feeling that there's a lot of, the Eight of Wands. Oh, they're two Eight of Wands. That's right. I forgot about this. The two Eight of Wands choices from the first deck. This is what she goes with in the second deck, and this was the option, and I kept both of them in. Because I couldn't choose between the two. Anyway, I have the feeling that there's a lot of meaning carried in this deck through Wotherspoon's choices of paintings, and she doesn't tell us that in the little book. She doesn't tell us where the paintings are chosen from. I don't think. Yeah, it hasn't. She doesn't in the first book. Yeah, she doesn't give us a sourcing. She gives us a little bit about Redon, a little bit about his life, but does not tell us the sourcing of the cards. Although I think she has real meaning. When I've figured out what what painting she's taken her cards from, it's proved to be instructive. This is a beautiful Queen of Wands. Okay. So that's a pretty decisive change. I like them both. Not sure. This is, I'm pretty sure, a combination of two paintings in one image, but I could be wrong. But it has that look to it. Really brilliant choice of imagery. And again, the way she uses, puts the imagery of the suit elements is really subtle. It's a little bit more pronounced as she brightens up the images in the second edition, but it's still super subtle. Doesn't really violate the dignity of the art, the integrity of the art. I think this is a really evocative Seven of Cups. I love this Ten of Cups. Even though it's more dark than we tend to think of the Ten of Cups, it pulls out a little bit more melancholy in the image of the Ten, but still so powerful. And this Page of Cups, oh my lord. everything about the page's relationship to the fish we have here with the conch shell. Nine of Cups, Queen of Cups, and King. Some of her court cards leave me a little bit cold. Like, I don't get that much from this King of Cups. I like it, but it doesn't do that much for me. I think the courts are her least successful. This is just beautiful. I mean, Redon is really getting us. There's a quote that I saw online from him. It might be in the little book, Wotherspoon's little book too, where he talks about wanting to use the visible to show the invisible, right? This whole idea of what a dream is and how dream imagery expresses something that can't be expressed in the material world. And, you know, yeah, this is the stuff of the psyche. This is a very watery deck, right? In terms of the ways that I talk about decks having elemental associations. This deck is all about the realm of soul, of image, of archetype, of dream. It's watery, watery, watery. And of course the medium, the way Redon uses charcoal and pastel and oil, it just echoes that wateriness. I like the colors of this second edition Eight of Swords, but I think that the first edition captures the essence of the card more fully. You know, Redon does a great deal with angelic figures. He's, you know, there's sort of this both kind of Catholic, angel, heavenly stuff, and then this Asian, Buddhist, Japanese-y aesthetic coming together here. And I love all the ways in which the flightiness of angels figures in this deck. Knight of Swords, Queen of Swords, a queen on a horse, which is kind of powerful for this particular card. And this is a really evocative King of Swords, actually. With his hand full of stars. Okay, there's a lot of shifting, I think, in the Pentacles suit. Which in the first edition had some cards that were noticeably quite dark. The Three of Pentacles and the Four of Pentacles remain pretty dark in the second edition. These sort of brown sepia tones. But toward the end of the Pentacles pips, things brighten up in the second edition. That was one of the things I checked right away when I opened the deck. I love the Six of Pentacles. Oh. This Eight of Pentacles makes a lot more sense to me than the first edition. Now here's where the changes happen that I think are significant. This Nine of Pentacles. This Nine of Pentacles feels like a funeral. I did a reading for someone where this was one of the key cards that came up, and I was like, oh my goodness. I suddenly realized that I had to interpret this as being in shadow. The 9 and the 10 came up for this person. I was trying to talk about home and lineage and family, and I was like, yeah, everything looks like it's in shadow. And my client confirmed that home and lineage and family were kind of shadowy topics for them. But anyway, the difference between this Nine of Pentacles and this one, and then I think this is slightly, the second edition Ten of Pentacles, still pretty dark, has brightened up a little bit. love this page. I love that color, aqua. Okay, so the bonus cards are all different. The backs are different, and then there's a handful of other cards that are different between the two decks. I would be hard-pressed, actually, now, having looked through these with you, I'd be hard-pressed to say which edition I like better. I love them both, truth be told. I love them both. I think I'm tilting a little bit toward the second edition, although there are some cards in the first edition that are only in the first edition that I quite like this Justice. I really like. Yeah. Beautiful deck. Melissa Wotherspoon. The Lonely Dreamer. One of the best decks that I've ever come across in terms of its art and its cardstock and its overall insight into the world of tarot. As always, thank you so much for watching, and thank you for your practice. Take good care and sweet dreams. Bye.